The single greatest skill in sales, business, and life is the ability to listen. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at the 8 fundamental keys of becoming a great listener. I've distilled these keys from some of the greatest books, audio programs, and people on the topic, and brought them together in this video so that you too can become a great listener. Let's get started. Okay, so number 1 is to listen without an agenda. You see, most people don't listen. All they do is wait for an opportunity to respond. But true listening happens when you have no agenda, when you set aside your own concerns and focus wholeheartedly on the person. As Stephen Covey put it, seek first to understand, then be understood. Because when you truly listen to another person, you let them know that they're important to you, that you care about them, and that you value them. When you really listen to a person, it allows them to open up and for you to get to know them a lot better. It is said that the greater half of all communication happens not in what is said, not even in what words are used, but in how well you actually hear what the other person has to say. Or as Plato put it, the truth is revealed in dialogue. And listening is what allows a conversation to blossom into genuine dialogue. And so the first key to effective listening is simple. Just listen. No agenda, just listen. Completely and fully to the person. Okay, so the second key is to be interested rather than interesting. This means being genuinely interested in the other person and making them the most important topic of conversation. Which means when a person tells you something, that you don't try and one-up them with a better story. For example, maybe a person tells you about some holiday that they went on, and you can tell that they're really excited and happy about this. And then you think of a holiday that you went on, and you start to go ahead and explain it. And by the end, it turns out that your holiday was a lot more interesting than the holiday that they went on. And essentially puts the other person's holiday to shame. Of course, most of us don't do it so that we can be better than the other person. We just simply like talking about ourselves. It's human nature. But remember, when you're listening to someone, it's not about you. It's about them. So always keep your focus on the other person and be genuinely interested in whatever it is they have to share. Okay, so now let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is don't interrupt. Now this is something that we are all guilty of. It's easy to interrupt people when they're speaking, and a lot of the time you may do it because you think you're doing it from good intentions. But really it's just your own ego getting in the way. And when you jump in on a person while they're still speaking, just so that you can share your own opinion, what you're really saying is that you don't value this person, that you don't really care what it is that they're saying, you just want a chance to get across your own opinion. So instead, always let the other person finish their sentence before even considering speaking. Shows that you truly value what the person is saying. Another thing to avoid is fillers. These are words and sounds like, ah, okay, yep. I remember when I first learned about this, I was like, wow, this is something that I always do to people while they're speaking. And I'm sure you're probably thinking right now, it's something that you do also. And you might think that doing it, it's showing the person that you're listening. But really, what it's doing is giving almost like a verbal nudge to the person, saying that, hurry along, okay, yep. Just essentially biding time for you to interject and put in your own opinion. It doesn't really show that you're listening. Instead, the real way to show that you're listening is to not speak at all and just allow the silence. A good analogy is to imagine that you're in a dark room and that whenever someone speaks, a light shines onto that person. Which means that every time you make a little okay, yep, or speak up and over speak the person, the light goes onto you and off of the person, leaving them in the dark. But if you sit there, not speak, in the silence, and just allow that person to do most of the talking, then the light will stay on them the majority of the time. And that is the way that it should be. Okay, so let's move on to number 4. And number 4 is don't finish sentences. This is another one that most of us are guilty of. And again, most of us most likely do it from a place of thinking that we're helping the person. But what it's really saying is that you think you're smarter than that person, that you know what they're going to say next or what the next best word is that they should use. I'm sure you've all had someone do it to you. It's pretty annoying. Instead, just let the person finish their own sentences. Even if the person seems to be struggling to find the word or finish off their sentence, just let them find it themselves. They will. Okay, so number 5 is to pause before replying. In becoming a great listener, it is essential that you become comfortable with silence, because it is within the silence that the power lies, not in the words. As Brian Tracy states in his world-renowned book, The Psychology of Selling, the selling takes place in the words, but the buying takes place in the silence. So instead of jumping in as soon as a person stops speaking, instead, get yourself in the habit of waiting at least 2 to 3 seconds before making a response, even if the person asks you a question. This pause will do 3 things. Firstly, it will convey to the person that you're carefully listening to them. Secondly, it will allow you to actually hear and understand what the person is saying and formulate a correct response. And thirdly, it will prevent the risk of interrupting the person. Okay, so number 6 is to clarify. Never just assume that you know what another person means. Instead, pause and then ask, how do you mean? Clarify this for me. Help me understand. Each time you ask for clarification, the person will expand on what they mean, and it will also show that you're listening. Okay, so number 7 is to paraphrase in your own words. This is one of the most effective ways of showing to a person that you're actually listening to them, especially when done after clarifying with a person. For example, after a person finishes speaking, you can follow up with, what I hear you saying is, and then paraphrase what they just said, followed by a question like, am I correct? Because questions are what keeps the conversation flowing. And the more questions you ask, the more chance you have to listen. And the more you listen, the more you'll understand. Now we move on to the final key of effective listening, and that is acknowledging. This is one of the most powerful ways of showing a person that you're listening to them. Saying things such as, thank you for sharing that. I acknowledge you for sharing that. Thank you for being so brave and sharing that. I really appreciate you for opening up about that. It's a deep human need to feel acknowledged. So by acknowledging a person after they share something, not only is it showing that you are truly listening to them, but it also shows that you care. Remember, becoming a great listener will not just benefit you in business, it will benefit you in every aspect of your life. If you found this video of value, then be sure to support it and share it out with others. And if you'd like to see more videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.